Hey guys, perseverance today. This is our 5th video, or is it a 6th? I've lost track. Well, that's what happens when I spend a long time away from you guys and trying to get back on track here. We're going to be a shout out to Rion from Unite the Collective. I got the pyramid bed grid awesomeness. I got 8 of these. Kind enough to give me 4 of them, bought an additional 4 and in the main pyramid. So if you are into this pyramid alchemy, Unite the Collective channel, go check them out. Rion does these by hand. Aren't they just gorgeous? Oh my god, incredible night's sleep, that's for sure. Now we're on book 3. This is our 2nd chapter in this. And if you're interested in what this is, just give me a text inquiring for info on book 3. Here we go. Oh, wait. May this be a blessing to you. The sacred scriptures of the ancients described our manifestation as coming from the Adam Kadmon, the archetypal being before creation, an Elohim's creative image in the higher worlds imprinted on the body network of life. This image reveals not only a higher blueprint of life prior to the legendary fall, but the existence of a higher consciousness of light potential. As a collective humanity, we have been striving for many thousands of years towards our divine state. This book outlines the migration of the human into a transhuman existence on its path back into the Adam Kadmon. In the flow from the Adam Kadmon, we use what Hebrew mystics call the Tismutsum, the contracting path, whereby the start-stop encoding of old mythologies, ideologies, and theologies within the curvature of conventional space is left behind. In moving to a higher state of consciousness, we experience what the Keys of Enoch tells us is a consciousness flow of physics from our physical body of vibration, connected with the familiar electromagnetic and epikinetic bodies, into our overself and Christed or overself body, which work with the Ika, Gematrian, and the Sohar bodies. These 5 bodies act together, guiding spiritual thought, overseeing our physical actions, creating an integral harmony, and reprogramming our intelligence for communication between the human body and our overself body as we prepare for higher levels of experience. Approaching this synergy, we can understand the text of 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 15 through 18. Quote, "If the foot should say, 'Because I am not a hand, I am no part of the body,' it is not for this reason no part of the body. And if the ear should say, 'Because I am not an eye, I am no part of the body,' it is for this reason no part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? If it were all hearing, where would the smelling be? But now God has set the members in the body, each one of them, just as he pleased." End quote. We also begin to appreciate what the ancient Kabbalists termed the tree of life, the organizational structure underlining our life/body, working on different scales and modes of operation, viz. Quantum modalities. This involves atoms, molecules, synapses, neurons, feedback networks, emotional fields, and consciousness systems that can switch from unconscious to superconscious states. The quantum flow of the tree of life circulates from where our feet stand on Mother Earth, or Malkuth, to the energy field of our head, the Kether. When the Kether is activated, the true God of living love and living light is felt, and we can open the gateways to a greater universe as the tree of life expands. Before this can happen, however, or fear of God must be reordered into a respectful awe of God, an acceptance of the redemptive nature of the divine eternal Father. The Over-Self Awakening charts the interactive flow and transition from a quote-unquote limited unconscious self to a new states of creativity and supraconscious communication between the self and the Over-Self. A series of multi-level illustrations reveals the various universal steps into soul growth, and a meta language is introduced via symbolic and sephoratoric pathways, triangulations, and associations, pointing the way to thinking in extra-dimensional experiences of life. Each picture represents the next step forward. While many believe that each individual experience of evolutionary growth is unique, this book provides an archetypal model connected with humanity's evolutionary growth process that is valuable for all. And although from our limited perspective it appears that we evolved from this biological bottom upward, in reality we are part of a network of spiritual evolutionary growth designed from the top down. In general, most people looking at themselves perceive only a series of psychic events such as desires, feelings, and thoughts. Rarely do they perceive the underlying permanent substance of soul and its powers of association. In a world where information flow is conditionally accelerating, we must realize that our practical life rests on limited beliefs, such as the belief in the happenstance of nature. Maturity of soul brings the dawning realization that much of life's mystery bespeaks a higher purpose. This purpose concerns our transcendence and our participation in parallel and advanced worlds. Our greatest perceptual tool, Sophia, or wisdom, as the nourisher of the tree of life, is also the creative or divine feminine principle of our mind, and she has a hunger for a true awakening and participation in a higher consciousness no longer covered by the many masks of ignorance. The teachings of the Over-Self Awakening assert the active role historically ignored in the theological schools of the West of the divine feminine as an equal partner in the process of evolution and ascension of each individual taking place regardless of gender. The ultimate picture we must contemplate is the human, which is us, connected with our higher self, which in turn is connected with our Over-Self. The higher soul surrounded by a myriad form of life. Now we realize that we are intimately connected with the divine who daily calls to us to become part of the renewal of life beyond the illusions of separation. This is where we begin our next phase, that of being true sons and daughters of God. As the psalmist affirms, quote, "And all of you are sons of the Most High." That's Psalms 82:6. 2. From I to we. The self-meta-programming of the collective. As we move through the rites of passage, forging different planes of understanding, we realize that our soul is connected with the dynamics of other souls, as well as the energies of the inner psyche. The term we in this book refers only to you and your Over-Self bodies, but to you and others on planet Earth who are having a similar experiences of spiritual evolution. It is the premise of this book that we cannot evolve alone. Personal conversations with God may be rewarding, yet the ultimate recipient of insight received should be the all around you, not only your individual self. The heavens work collectively, and so should the earth. We need to learn a greater respect and tolerance of others if our evolution is to proceed into spaces of collective beingness. It is our hope that this book will provide a blueprint for building triangles of cooperation rather than competition. Although the powers of the extended mind, Mind 2, can activate a higher octave of vibratory resonance, we can go nowhere without the proper alignment with other beings on planet Earth. A complete human life is not merely a life of personal knowledge. Basing our thoughts and actions exclusively on our personal subjective responses to life isolates us from the deepest root of existence, the core through which we may link with the divine and our family of light. To ignore or avoid this is to exist without a higher purpose. Our stages of growth occur not only in our over-self bodies, but within our spiritual family through the exercise of tolerance and understanding that comes from a higher level of unconditional love. Divine love, agape, should be at the core of our seeking, not waiting behind habitual individual masks of fear to be accessed and shared only conditionally. On the other hand, collective work cannot succeed through coercion, but only through love, the greatest source of power and healing. Discoveries of the higher self, the awakened overself, cannot be achieved completely in isolation. We must remove the individual mask so that the fullness of the divine image may flow through us. This realization of true consciousness expansion for the welfare of all, not for ritual or ego totemism, comes as a gift from the divine so that we may see meaning in the building of an authentic partnership with the sacred. We will be able to experience the visitation of the divine host of light when our consciousness resonates freely with the core vibration of divine love. The experiential field of the man-woman-God partnership, the new being, is the triple power that becomes possible when knowledge and humility meet in working with the divine family that exists here and throughout the universe under many names. Example would be cosmic cultures. The mission of co-evolution and co-creativity with others in divine service requires the gathering of all nations and peoples into the recognition of a greater reality beyond the walls of separation. On higher levels of spiritual and paraphysical unity, we share incredible knowledge of possibilities, including that of fusion with the holistic overself and the work of unity in our planet. Our goal is a capstone focus point that brings together many streams and orders of complexity. This requires a unity of minds moving from chaos to creative order, in cooperation with the hierarchies and communities who work for the top down in bringing light into the worlds of experimental form. This brings us to the purpose of daily use of the Overself awakening as an inner teaching, to achieve a synthesis of inner-outer mirror image of the divine image as we shepherd our human genome into the next level of expansion towards a positive future. The inner themes of this book envision the upgrading of the human being who chooses to be a peacemaker for the unity of all humankind through peaceful inner shift of consciousness, or shift towards a higher cosmology of consciousness, and our inner growth must precede a quantum shift in the outer world of conflict and change. By working through the stages of initiation and fully realizing our God-given powers, we perceive the mental images of pictographs needed for full participation within the larger body of cosmic intelligence. This is the higher path of courage and self-realization, which opens the possibility of a renewed planetary humanity that can operate beyond planet Earth. Here, we continue the work of prophets such as Enoch and the work of other saints and sages of God as they accompany us on our journey. Within this work, our energies of consciousness intention, and extension are directed to reach out and touch humanity, the we, at the same time that we reach out to experience the host of light in inner and outer divine realms. The interweaving of life within different branches of humanity will hopefully reveal the different aspects necessary to make the transition from a simple three-dimensional tree of local knowledge to a multidimensional tree that is non-local and universal in scope. 3. The structure of the book for ecumenical exercises. While reading this book every day, practice expanding your spiritual consciousness, your mind, and your soul. It is our privilege to use daily reflections for upward consciousness expansion, which can be seen as a series of exercises we would call, quote, the over-self reflections as my wedding garment, end quote. These spiritual exercises incorporate thought images as well as sacred words. The spiritual exercises and projections are to be visual as a living discovery, not to be read with the intellect, but experienced with the heart and soul. We must think, pray, and sing daily as the text unfolds into a geometric map or sutra of inner development in which everyone can reconnect with a divine thought or collective evolutionary journey. Just as the Kabbalists would have you exercise your growth within the tree of life, this book is designed to activate the image process behind the principles of the spiritual life. These stages, used as a daily exercise, can transform belief into realization, theory into practice, as transcendental experience shifts between the practically awakened self and fully awakened self in the presence of Christ. As we learn to consciously move through the stages of physical reality, our powers of imagery and our paraphysical remote viewing skills become activated. We can now employ mental projection to participate in the flow of information. We begin also to pass through material doors in skeptical minds, comprehending how much we have been operating within the limitations imposed by third and fourth dimensional paradigms. If through our transpersonal and superluminal experiences we can transcend the mental cube or box that standard physics has placed around us, then we can awaken to the matrix of life. We have existed as a biocomputer on one elementary level, and now we are moving into a human-divine partnership on many other levels so that we can coexist on higher levels of consciousness with countless other beings of universal intelligence. Our suggestions for these exercises are as follows. First, take time to create a safe and sacred space within your mind's eye so that you will not be disturbed as you expand your consciousness to see the details of horizons merging with the central geometries. Create a temple in your mind and body, like a mandala, so that its fractal geometries comes into perfect balance, opening you to a new consciousness possibilities. Second, focus on each illustration, extending your consciousness into the thoughts/words as nonlinear, multidimensional quantum possibilities. Know yourself as the initiate moving into new life experiences. Third, allow all intentions and extensions of your consciousness to expand to the point of projecting through the fullest color spectrum, connecting all pictures in an upward and outward movement of higher thought. Fourth, don't be afraid to exercise the connection between verbal language and visualization as you use the sacred expressions of the sacred names of the Most High and begin to experience other realities. Fifth and finally, ask the divine for guidance and discernment, allowing you to be a temple of understanding, connecting your self-realization with your brothers and sisters throughout the world with whom you participate in creating spiritual healing and cultural holism. We start with the creation of a sacred space so that the pictographic models of transition can center within our multiple mental bodies. From the chakra energy centers of the body, we enter the energy flow that carries us toward a higher state of consciousness. And through the threshold of enlightenment, therefore, where pictures become a liquid language. The sacred geometries, especially the capstone, can be focused around our kether or crown point as a super brain activating or super soul and super spirit. This higher center point is where the divine image and human image merge, the point from which we will expand our human self in a series of steps leading to the mind of supernature or mind 2. This is also the point from which our microevolution extends into the overself and ultimately into the Christed overself. In these states of meditation, we discover ways to reprogram negative situations through the power of the reflective mind, leaving behind the limited thoughts of the past and advancing into the phases of growth within the capstone where independent movements are centered. The search we are undertaking as initiates activating our powers of the supermind, opening spaces between levels of cognition within us, dissolving the veils that hide our innermost nature. This expanding consciousness carries us to new levels of creativity and into the universal feminine wisdom called Chakma, the Kabbalist tradition, Sophia in the Greek. As pilgrims on Mother Earth, we can learn to move from the depths of the soul into the time vaults and monuments of history and into new frontiers of the universe, to connect with the seekers, the sages, the scientists of this world who are prepared to journey beyond this chapter of life into our next evolutionary phase. This book guides us through the steps and stages of conscious evolutionary growth, but to fulfill your potential, these must be employed in your personal meditations to create actual consciousness communication. Music added to meditation can enhance levels of self-programming. In the deeper teachings, we invite you to listen with appreciative ears and sympathetic minds to the sacred words and music of our ancient ancestors and to the music of the Academy. Just as a magnifying glass focuses sunlight for concentrated heat, our mind's eye can focus life's musical energy to intensify the spiritual flow. The key to the practice outlined herein is to allow the language of light to be imprinted upon our consciousness along with the higher symbols of transformation. This book offers sacred expressions in several sacred languages, some of which derive from the book entitled The 72 Living Divine Names of the Most High. The language of light is the language that uses the names of God and sacred expressions to help us reconnect with the Most High. Many of these expressions are part of the language. This is the original language of soul vibrations that communicates with other heavenly realms, as promised in Zephaniah 3:9. Quote, "For then I shall give to peoples the change to a pure language." End quote. The sacred language and sacred expressions, such as those given in each of these chapters, help create a holistic understanding and the synthesis of all inner vehicles of mental, physical, and spiritual life. Through the living words and vibrations of spirit, we acquire a higher mindset. The language of light becomes a vehicle that takes us into realms where sacred thought forms connect with the divine. Be encouraged that you have the capacity to rise into other evolutionary phases of connectedness right now. Be prepared to work to harmonize and activate a true lifeline of unity, uniting our cornerstone of evolving consciousness with the transforming energies that signal the return of the true messengers of the Most High God. Through the divine names and sacred expressions, let us synergize the light of the divine eternal Father in the organs of our bodies as we activate higher states of consciousness, which then extend to balance and be balanced by the temples and sacred areas of the world through the Shekinah, or the divine She. With the light and love of the divine names, we can fill each temple and sacred area of the world with the golden proportion of the light that resonates with the sacred geometries of, it has a 0 with the slash in it, and then the pi sign, and then the E. And those are really weird numbers, so I'll show them to you instead of trying to repeat them. It's that third line from the top. We see the temples and sacred areas as nodes of transduction on a geometric grid encircling the earth, keyed to the sides serving as repositories of wisdom and understanding. These centers are home to the mastery necessary to preserve the accumulated energies poured into them from divine sources within the matrix of life. From the primeval shape of our temple of being in biological form, we can unfurl into a tree-like entity with extensions patterned after the golden mean spiral. Each picture in this book should be reflected, refracted, and rejuvenated within us as a living sacred pictogram that we enter into and assimilate in such a way that the inner tree of life moves our body of energetics into a higher plane of coherence. Our connection with the pictures and the universal information flowing through this book can unlock the teachings of the heavens, but you must also do your work. Maintain your respect for a loving Godhead. Dedicate yourself to help humanity. Keep your thoughts positive and use higher insights. With musical resonance and sacred love for all peoples, let us now forge a new consciousness time zone, and let us go forward with all that is connected with the greater inner and outer realms of life experience. We understand the higher meaning behind the words of John's Gospel from John 1:1. Quote, "In the beginning was the Word, Logos, of God." For this was a sound, a power, a thought, a vibration. As we invoke the Word, we can re-experience our new being connected with the Christ in the new heavens, where dialogue with the presence of great divine mind of ongoing creation will have no end. And we'll leave it there for now. Never mind, we're going to finish. Number 4, our future is one of experience. Or over self-awakening has been written to connect with human with the divine flow of liquid symbols. This requires a geometric flow of supportive musical synergy, connected with mathematics and sacred geometry of the letters and pictures of the sacred names that represent a higher modality of life connected with our future body of light, the body of the bride. The thought pictures are but stepping stones, a type of ladder of Jacob, a gateway to the stars and angelic realms. More than metaphors, they are preparatory maps for encounters with other dimensions of life in the living universe. Each illustration in the Over Self-Awakening represents a pilgrimage of discovery in the descending and ascending process of the mind, while being enfolded in the feminine principle, which is the key to the mothering of the new life. Accordingly, as we visualize the stages of human nature, we grow from realized self to over-self, from over-self to Christ over-self, from Christ over-self to orders of paradise sons, from paradise sons into the Elohistic over-self and the immortality of the supernature of Adam Kadmon. Birth and rebirth are connected with each of these images as we learn to grow beyond the field of Mother Earth into the field of Divine Mother. As we move beyond ignorance and temporal logic into other realities, we begin to make use of our image and similitude endowments. We see regenesis and rebirth merging through the mental pictures that bespeak the transcendental and that so new degrees of reality beyond the logical and measurable mundane world. Human logic is finally ready to embrace the eternal qualities of life. The fractional existence of life and its over-self connection is not only an essence of life, but a divine process that can consciously incorporate human embodiment. Our descent through the planes of death is but our release from the old images of the human psyche. And we rejoice that this life is a valuable living a foretory in which we can reclaim our over self-existence on the higher planes of new beings. The change towards the new being comes in many ways, including redemption through the eternal Christ and co-creation through the eternal Spirit. Ultimately, our multiple bodies of consciousness form the diamond vehicle, the Merkaba, which transits and ascends into a larger circle dance of life. See Psalms 150. The Over-Self Awakening invites you to step out of conventional space-time and into the Merkaba to experience a flow of energy connected with the living and dynamic intelligence of the great architect of the Tree of Life in a living universe. See Revelations 22:18. The challenge now is to forge our inner independent bond with the Christ and messengers, and we claim our birthright. Every cell in our body inherits the promise of Homo Universalis. Daily, we are discovering that we are non-local beings connected with other orders of intelligence. We are no longer enslaved by old cyclic patterns of solar chauvinism. It is now time to accept our holistic transition to new regions of creation where all paradigms converge and complement each other, reaching upward and inward. Challenges still lie ahead in discerning the different angelic hierarchies, a subject which we do not explore extensively in this book, as we find ourselves working with different pluralistic consciousness time zones. Remember to question any information you encounter to see if it is consistent with the great prophets, if it allows the participants to use free will, and if it is designed to help all of humanity. Join in the Logos, which can expand into the universe as it enlightens and quickens us through our divine overself. The Keys of Enoch tells us, quote, "The mind of man will be moved off the spatial dimension." That's Key 112, verse 26. As we make an inward commitment to each other here and on higher planes of glory. Our work as planetary pilgrims on Earth is to unite our over-self components in service to the human race and in service to all forms of life through the two hands of God. The angelic guardians and the watchers are there, waiting within the visual gates to show us how to use the cosmic roadmap with unconditional love and service to every living form. It does not matter if we are in a child's consciousness, a young person's consciousness, or an adult's consciousness. The codons of DNA, the pyramidal cells of our brain, the microtubules of our body, etc., all can turn, as Jesus demonstrated, into the greater light through the power of divine thought, divine words, divine images, and divine expressions as we grow into the unified man-woman divine triple power. Knowing the incredible power of prayer and light, we can move forward within our personal temple of understanding with the gifts of pure communication. As we synchronize the eye of the physical body with the eye of the spirit, we are now prepared for quantum changes and are quickened to step into advanced worlds. In the vision of John the Divine, we grow in spirit to become the ultimate connection between the inner temple of God's Holy Spirit and the higher worlds of the Spirit that we will inherit as we work with the intelligence of the vast cosmic realms open to us in the advent of the cosmic Christ. As it is written by John the Divine in Revelations 3:12, quote, "He that conquers, I will make him a pillar in my temple, and he will by no means go out from it any more. And I will write upon him the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, the heavenly Jerusalem, which descends out of heavens from my God, and that new name of mine." End quote. We are at the door of a vast initiation process for divine contact. When the initiation phase of this work is completed, we will unite our overself with the fuller presence of the divine, the Shekinah. This is one of the deepest and most challenging aspects of life that we must face in the great transition into the cosmic tomorrow. To be in pure love, compassion, and understanding amongst the assembly of those in the order of Melchizedek and those of the second coming of Christ, the two who wisely helped to establish our DNA to become one with Jacob's ladder of ascension, Ad Astra. And that is the introduction, and I'll leave you with the picture. The Holistic Overself, Adam Codman Blueprint. The Christ in Overself, eyes appear closed because we are unawakened. The Overself and the physical self. Talk to you soon.